$15,000. Turnout gear, $11,000. Their acquisition program for the chief's vehicle, $66,12, which equals that $33,612. Now, we know they need the turnout gear and the acquisition and the hose. You remember the testimony that he said with,
Yes.
after, bless you,
Bless you.
older than 1987, it needs to be replaced. And then the Flanders Fire Department equipment, the turnout gear, that was originally in his budget. We moved it into capital, and that's something that they need 6 sets. Now, if you look on the descriptive page, you note that the sets of turnout gear for the Nyack Fire Department say $2,200 each, and the turnout gear for the Flanders say $3,010 each. It's because the Nyack Fire Department only needs partial sets. They have some hoods and other things there that they don't have to replace, so that's why the difference in price, okay?
Any questions from the board on either fire department's equipment?
None.
Okay? Mr.
So the
Formica?
police, we talked a little bit about that with Chuck. This has got 97,034 in there, of which I don't have the breakdown. I don't know if Anna has the breakdown. But it does tell you that we purchased 2 vehicles in 9, 10, 12, and 13. And the third vehicle that you've had conversations about was a detective vehicle. So you have the breakdown?
23,309 is what's required for what's proposed in 1450. The remaining 74,000 is commitments for prior year programs.
The commitment for prior year programs has to do with the 2 vehicles.
No, what I mean by prior years is prior year acquisition purchase.
For what it cost?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's 74?
Yes. 1,000.
For 2
Or
vehicles.
thereabouts, 74,000.
74,000. I'm not sure where the decimal point is in the, but you guys.
Do we have money left over in CNRE vehicle acquisition line item? No. We took that all out last year? Okay.
We did have a sheet last year, didn't we, with all the balances and different CNREs and what we were,
I don't remember.
No, we did.
We have one for you if you'd like.
that would be great.
Yes.
Okay.
Good with police? or-
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Emergency management, 56,649, 44,313. I believe that's the third payment for the tower radio program. And then their acquisition, 7336 for the fire
Thank you.
marshal's vehicle. And the flow gauge for $5,000 is for Latimer Brook for us to fund that was stopped being funded by the DEP, and between the harbor management and emergency management, and I don't know, do you use that, Joe? Anyway, it was determined that we needed to keep that flow gauge up. That's why the 5,000 is there. Go, Public Works.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The truck acquisition, you see 519,343. The payments for prior year commitments are 432,934. And then you heard Chuck talk about the vehicles, the dump truck 148, the pickup 32 with a dump and plow. 130 for the roadside over-the-rail mower, 73 for the mini excavator, and 8,500 for the trailer, 20,000 for the 5-ton roller. So that payment would be the balance of the 432, 934, and the 519. If you bought all those new, that would. So if a good way to figure that is divide whatever number, if you want to cut out one of those things, divide it by 5, and that's roughly what you'll save off that 519.
Okay.
And then the 62.5, the last one is I believe this is the last payment on the recycling carts, the barrels that we bought for the program 5 years ago. We bought, how many? 300? 500? I don't know, more than that, because there's that many. Yeah, we bought a lot of them, and the Scarab financed it for 1% for us, and this represents the last payment.
Okay.
Going forward, we'll just have to buy replacements, things that get run over by trucks or, backed into by Anna or whoever else.
Any questions from the board on, any further questions on capital before we move on? Seeing none, I gave everybody a list of what deliberations would do tonight.
Before we go there, will we
Okay.
be reviewing the capital plan in its entirety?
I believe we did.
We did.
One night, but we
Well,
can.
I mean, there's stuff that we may,
A few minute meetings, though.
I think you were
oh,
gone.
can't believe you could do that without me.
Yeah, you were absent.
You can watch it on
All
TV,
right.
though, if
You
you're
were
bored one
in
night.
Albuquerque or something, but
I was in Albuquerque, is
yeah,
that what you said? Okay.
the numbers that we just went over should represent year one of that capital improvement plan.
Yes, except there's things in here that we're considering to bond that I thought we would talk about them in this forum, but we're not. We already talked about them apparently.
Well, I certainly can talk to you about it offline if you like.
Okay.
But those all, as you know, bond comes through the process again. Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, town meeting, any bonding,
Mm-hmm.
appropriation. So
Okay.
they're there as placeholders. Usually what happens with the bonds, just so you know, that as we get into May, we do the road bond for $900,000.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever else we need, any of the LoCIP stuff that we know that we're gonna spend that needs to go through the process, we'll get that right away so that the Public Works folks have that to schedule road jobs. We've done that the last four years, I believe. So the rest of them are subject to need.
Perceived need.
Okay,
Can I just ask one question on this,
Sure.
the handout on the CNRE fund expenditures? So yellow is already taken care of, it's already been appropriated out of the CNRE, and it's projects that are in progress in town, in terms of your color code? Okay, and red, is that a project that,
Those are remaining balances from a prior year acquisition plan, so
Okay.
they're not available to spend.
no, I'm just, but they're the balance that are left off after expenditures that are in the account? Or did they go back to the general fund?
No, they didn't, because what happened is the first year of the acquisition plan, we paid for the vehicles and the financing company reimbursed us. So if, let's say, for example, we estimated the vehicle was gonna cost $70,000 and it only cost $60,000, we only received $60,000, so that $10,000 we're unable to spend.
Because the
Because we didn't-
10,000 doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
Okay. So on the red here, none of these balances is not real cash.
Exactly.
It was an estimate,
Exactly, yes.
and the funds to pay for that was when you got the bill, at only that amount,
Yes.
and it wasn't put in the account waiting for the bill to come. Okay. And then green, I'm sorry, but it's easier for me to do it this way. And green is, we have to get it in someplace. It's sitting in the general fund, whether it came in from grants or whatever, but it has to go into the right account?
No,
Okay, so it says to allocate, so it's there, but it needs to go out.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll
So-
move on to start deliberations.
How do we know what we have left in any of these accounts that we just didn't need to spend?
See, we took it out last year.
Right.
That's what's on here.
Right, but not all of this money is available to use, if I understood you right, Anna, maybe I
Right,
didn't.
so if you go to the second page and you look at the little box in the right-hand corner,
Mm-hmm,
okay, so there's, we've appropriated $9,086,000, we've expended $8,022,000 to date. Of the
Right.
remaining $1,064,000, $650,000 of that are projects that are currently in progress. There is approximately $165,000 that is available to appropriate for items. There were some LoCIP projects that were appropriated in this fund, and the balances in LoCIP is a little over $21,000. The vehicle acquisition program, those balances are not available to spend. And then what's highlighted in blue, those were appropriations specific to the Board of Education. Those funds would need to be made available to the Board of Ed. That's why I've highlighted them in blue.
mm-hmm.
And then the remaining 30,000, I would need to do additional research on those sums. So that kind of explains what's available.
Okay.
Any leftover LoCIP money, that just goes, can it just stay where it is? I mean, you don't have
Well,
to give
LoCIP
it back.
It would be available for us to use for other projects that we so choose.
So if I look at the capital improvement plan for this year, we're taking, I gotta remember the number, $78,750 out of CNRE to pay for the things that go in a police vehicle. So where does that come from, the 164,684?
That's correct. Well,
Okay.
right, yes. It's part of that, yeah.
Part of the 164.
Yeah.
So we are already, out of the 164,000, we are already planning to take $78,750 out of the 164,000. Okay? Thank you. Okay, well, we said we were gonna start deliberations this meeting, and out of the list, we started with first selectman. Anybody wish to open 101 first selectman and to discuss that?
Move to open Department 101.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any comments from the board on 101?
So our process is going to be to make a recommendation for a cut per department. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
true.
All right. I recommend we cut $5,000 out of this department. I'm trying to remember what was returned.
Well, during one of our meetings, we talked about economic development, $3,000, and we said, let's move that to Parks and Rec and let them fund that out, let them do all the
Rentals for events, supplemental.
more than rental, all the planning,
Right.
all the event planning, because they're the experts at event planning anyway. So we discussed that $3,000 at the meeting.
Okay.
And
So
you
we're
want-
gonna move that to Parks and Rec, that
No.
line item?
No, I was just gonna let them use their own money out of their special revenue fund for it, and just take
Oh.
this $3,000 away.
Okay.
Okay, I would recommend 3,000.
Well, we have a motion for 5,000.
Is there a second?
Do I hear a second on the 5,000? Okay, Now we have a motion for 3,000. Do I hear a second on the 3,000? I'll second it. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded to remove $3,000 from 101. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
5-0.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask a process question?
Sure.
Will you be identifying the line items that those come out of, or are you just giving
No,
the bottom line
No,
numbers?
I was
and
giving you
want
the
me to
bottom
come
line
back?
out of your department. You can take it from wherever you wanted.
All right.
I just went into the explanation because we had already previously discussed that.
So we'll
And
take
then on the
$3,000.
14th, on the 14th, you guys need to come back to us and say, out of each department, you remove this much money, and here are the line items we took it from.
Okay, so 101 is minus 3,000, but it can come from anywhere in there,
That's true.
and it's our job to come back with
It's
it.
your discretion. I think we want to leave it as department heads as we go through.
That's perfect, that works great
I
for
don't
us.
want to play line item.
Do I have a motion to close 101?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, next item we're going to deliberate is 102. Does anybody want to discuss anything in 102? That's
Well,
the
first I'll
assessor's
move to
office.
open the assessor's budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have no recommendation. I'd rather leave it as is.
I have a recommendation that remove $685 from 102. So I make that motion, we remove $685 from 102. Do I have anybody seconding that?
Do we second before we discuss?
Yes, and then we discuss.
Okay, we can discuss. I'll second that.
Okay?
So, last year we returned $11,700 from this budget.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, not thinking about cutting that much, but where'd you come up with your number?
I looked at what we've used so far this year. I've looked at what we've returned over the last 3 years. And I looked at what I thought was, I've got to go back and find those papers, what I thought was a reasonable number.
Okay. Just seemed prescriptive. I'm not against it. I was just trying to follow your thought process.
That was a senior staff adjustment.
Okay.
If we look back,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're right, last year we did 11,000, but 2011, we did 1,300.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was, you know, I looked at that and said, let's take a portion of that away.
Well, my reasoning was a no recommendation, because I'm going to look at each budget as it is today. And sometimes you can look back at prior years and say, this has been the pattern, but sometimes there's unusual things, and sometimes it's based on department heads' efficiencies. And I really didn't see that as much as a flag in terms of funds that are returned each year. You know, it's a small amount, and I think I did err on the side of caution and not make a recommendation, and leave it as is.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove 685. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One opposed.
Move to close 102. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Department 103. That's the tax collector.
Move to open the tax collector budget, number 103.
Motion open.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, do I have a recommendation on 103?
I have a recommendation to increase it by $250, since that was the concern regarding the copying for legal work that you cannot do, legal documents that cannot be emailed or scanned.
That was a town clerk.
That was
Oh, town clerk? Oh, wait a minute. Tax collector, I have no recommendation.
Strike that from the record.
or substitute it later on.
Any other discussion for 103?
I move to cut this budget by $1,500.
Have a motion to cut this budget from $1,500 from the $172,938. Do I have a second? I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I thought we were going to discuss it. Well, you
5-0?
guys are throwing
Oh, I was waiting for
curveballs.
discussion.
That's all right. I'll give it an aye anyway.
Okay,
What is the number?
1,500.
1,500.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion to close 103.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Yeah.
So I have a motion to open 107.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
104, you mean?
No, 107.
107.
Okay.
Made and seconded to open. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to increase it by $250 in the supply line or wherever it's reduced.
We have a motion to increase it by $250. Do I have a second? Okay, any other recommendations?
You got any recommendations?
Not in this department.
No?
Why? Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I looked at this department over the history, what we've spent thus far this year, and my recommendation, my motion would be to reduce this by $2,000.
I'll second that.
Motion had been made and seconded to reduce 107 by $2,000. All those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
If I just may ask, Mr. Chairman, if
To
you're gonna,
discuss.
you're gonna cut me with commas in every one of these departments, at least have some discussion so I can hear what your thoughts are.
Okay.
Would that be after you've had your motion and second?
Certainly. I discussed why I had the 2,000. Then we'll erase the vote and say, any further discussion on the $2,000?
Thank you.
My discussion, well, I recommend against it. I think that's, again, you're going after small budgets on and amounts of money that vary each year, and it goes back to the fund if it's unused. And you're using a trend line based on averages. And some budgets I can understand, but in other budgets, it doesn't make any sense to me to do it that way.
Okay?
Well, do we know where, I know the history over the last 3 years, and not even averaging it is what, 14,807. I know we had a change in personnel, so is there any trend there, Anna, or?
Well, I think I remember we were saying since Esther had left, that payroll item would have decreased. So I was actually a little surprised to see this budget up.
Didn't they take a decrease?
Decrease was in the first year.
Oh,
We wouldn't carry Esther's salary for,
but we don't have a decrease. We didn't have
You
one
had
last
it-
year, and we don't have one this year. What am I not
Esther's
connecting?
been gone more than 2 years,
Well, if we look at what we've spent thus far this year,
budget years.
we're only about 40% of the total that was allotted. That's as of the end of March, so.
I mean, if you look at this budget, if you just wanna look down all the line items, the salary is Leslie's salary.
So I'll say it again?
Salary for the town clerk is her salary.
Yeah.
That's, I believe, still less than what Esther was getting.
Mm-hmm.
The assistant town clerks, that's what they're getting.
Yeah, that's up
And the
12%.
overtime, which is $200 in the longevity, I mean, that's what, so that 132,576, I don't think you can reduce.
Mm-hmm.
The contracted land record management, it's based on the number of recorded documents being the same as last year. So you could reduce that, and it will work if we have less recorded documents.
I guess my question would be, last year, the 3-year surplus that Anna supplied to us under the town clerk, 63013, there was $7,669 surplus. The prior year, $8,677. So the format that we get presented, I don't think is deviated much. So where did our $7,669 surplus from last year come from? Okay,
You'd have to look at it.
that would be nice.
Well, why don't you just use this then?
What? Use what? What's that? The
This is
same?
what you're looking at. It's the same sheet.
No, this is the remaining budget.
No, this
Give
is the
back
this is the
3 years history.
surplus.
I know.
Oh, you got it in a different format
I
than that?
have it in a different format for me to follow.
Well, it's not that I'm using it, but in this particular case, given the budget we had last year, how do we generate a surplus?
I think there's always some type of a
Prudent management.
return of funds, and it goes back into the general fund, which goes into the fund balance, which you use again to budget your year. So you could either do it two ways. You could look at that, but don't mix it up with people that are efficient in departments and reduce them by that amount. And then when you come down to the end of the year, when you decide you want to use fund balance, realize that you put that much less in fund balance. So it's a kind of like, though I understand and I do agree on some of the budgets, that the trend is much bigger and has been going on. But I think you need to weigh those all in.
So my
I think
perspective,
basically
Because
what
you're not
saying
gonna have
is-
that opportunity
I
when you
think
come to
basically
Board
what
of
she's
Ed.
saying is that if you put 750,000 in revenue from fund balance,
say that again, please.
if you're using $750,000 as a revenue from fund balance,
Yeah,
and you don't get that put back next year as a result of the extra dollars.
right, but it,
What Beth is saying is that you're gonna have trouble next year, because every year you use fund balance, you got that hole for the next year.
well,
So-
right, but you,
And I'm okay with whatever you do.
Right.
I'm just trying to go through the budget and let you know.
But I'm saying if we're gonna do it this way, then we shouldn't go to fund balance.
Right.
Because you're doing your fund balance now, which is fine, but I think that if you're gonna do it that way, then don't go to fund balance at the end.
All
Or
right,
you can't go
Well-
to that degree.
From a practical matter, it would be nice to know where the surplus came from, wouldn't it? I know it balances out, but if there's great efficiencies and there's a history of that, why rob Peter to pay Paul?
Mhm.
yeah, I'm kind of the thinking, and I'm open to feedback, okay? But I'm kind of the thinking, if there's money that comes back, and I look at the trend over the last 3 years, which has gone up considerably, I'm not ready to just sign on for a larger number just because it's our best guess. I mean, if you guys feel differently and you have a different view, I'm all ears. But I was thinking about cutting this 3,500. I mean, maybe it's a difference in philosophy, but I just don't think we need to continue to increase on a regular basis. If it's-
The only thing I was doing was explaining what Beth was
What I
saying.
meant by it, you could do
And
it-
that is
It's
that if you
doing the
cut it
same
now,
way.
Yeah,
you can't get it later.
I do follow what you're saying. It's
That-
gonna be
that's all
one
I'm
side of
saying.
the balance
So
sheet
just-
or the other.
Right.
That's fine.
And,
And it's fine to do it this way.
yeah, because
Yeah.
if we have experience
Or you can
that
do it the
the
other
other way
way.
is better, I mean, I'll certainly willing to listen to that. I just, every year I go back and look here and our budgets keep going up and,
The tax increase historically has been 1.25% at the end of the process for the last 5 years.
right, so we have to come up with the money from somewhere, right? So we either return it from fund balance or we cut it here.
So what I'm saying is 1.25%. You're acting like that's excessive.
No, I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying, in principle, there's always the trend to increase. I'm just kind of taking a big picture view of it, but,
And I'm with you. I mean, it's fine. You do it however you want. I'm grateful that you're giving me and the department heads the opportunity to make these adjustments within the budget, instead of you saying 500 here, 600 there, because they would rather have that kind of input.
right. I think
But
that's a
just be
better.
prepared for next year. What will happen, you'll have a bigger hole for revenue at some point in time. Now, if we're averaging 10% tax increase every year, then, and we have extra money we're giving back, then you have a point. But, I don't know how much of a variable I can give you that's less than or better than 1.25%, which is the average increase.
I don't think that that's the question. I think the point may be that we're presented with a budget increase on this side of the house of $662,000 more than we spent, more than the budget last year. And on the additional increase in capital and a $1.4 million increase in Board of Education funding. And when I sit down to go over and say, okay, how can I reduce each of those? And I'm saying, how can I reduce the $662,000 increase in the town side of the budget? I look back and say, what have I spent so far this year? And I recognize that we've been returning money to each year, and that goes into the fund balance, and that helps build up that. However, I'm also looking at, every day when I look at these books, if my job is what the town can afford, if our job is what can the town afford, then it's not really the town, it's the people of the town giving us the money to be able to afford it. And so we look at what can they afford. So if I look at what we've returned back over the last 3 years, and I didn't nearly approach that on any, and I look at what we've spent thus far, and I say, okay, now let me extrapolate and find out what's reasonable, and how much can I reduce that 662,000 by? And one of the points I come up with was, out of 107, I can take $2,000. I realize that that's, $2,000 out of 183,000 is not a whole lot, but
It
there's
adds up, though.
there's also 27 other budget line items that I'm looking at out of the town's budget to see if I can get down to some number that is more affordable for the townspeople. And so that's how I come, that's what I do to look at. I look at the overall increase, what's been proposed. I look at what's proposed for each budget. I did take a look at what's been returned from each budget over the last